Have the Colts offseason priorities shifted? We'll discuss how some players should be reevaluated after the season ends. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I am Jake Arthur, Indianapolis Colts beat writer from Roundtable Sports. Welcome to Locked On Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Today, we are going over the rest of the Q&A session that we had earlier in the week. We had one early week, I think the 25th, and you guys had sent us so many questions that we wanted to make sure we got the rest of these in for you before the next game. So it's game day morning. So we're going to go ahead and do some game day Q&A for you. A lot of focus on the offseason priority list for the Colts here and how some things may have changed within the last month or so for certain players. So we'll go ahead and dive into that now. This first one is from Ethan Callahan. We're starting to see the bumps in the Daniel Jones road with the multi-year extension basically already a foregone conclusion. Is there a belief that he can improve with more time in the system, or is this what you see is what you get at this point? So I do still think a multi-year deal it's likely. It's still potential. You know, if you rewind 6 weeks ago or so, you say, well, yeah, obviously it's looking like this guy, they're lock him up for 3+ years at this point. But with him coming down to earth a little bit, and then when you've got the injury as well, the fibula, which again they think it's going to kind of get better and heal on its own as the season goes. I don't think that's necessarily the slam dunk that we might have thought recently in the season. You might want to be strategic with it and go with the 1-year franchise tag after this year if Jones and his representation is open to it. Just because this is the best we've seen Jones play, maybe in his career, but certainly since 2022. And the Giants rewarded him with a huge, I think, $160 million contract extension after that season, and things kind of went south. So you kind of look at two sides of the coin here. Have the Colts seen enough? And they're like, yeah, this is the long-term marriage we want with Shane Steichen. Go ahead and give him 3 years, 4-year extension on top of this. Or do you just say, prove this wasn't a fluke. Let's go 1 more year on the franchise tag. And then basically say to him, if this goes well, the team keeps winning, you keep playing well, then we'll do, a multi-year extension after this franchise tag. So we'll see what they want to do. Again, the at least 2-3 year deal seems likely, but I do think in recent weeks, the franchise tag, or even if you just figure out a price on just a regular 1-year deal that everyone is happy with, I think that certainly has probably come more into the discussion recently. This next one from Steven Shepard. Assuming we re-sign Daniel Jones and Alec Pierce and maybe Nick Cross, who will be the starting edge opposite Laiatu Latu after the season, or how will that spot be filled? Has JT Tuimoloau shown enough in his limited opportunities to be given the role? So that one's interesting because I think the edge group might be one that undergoes the most transformation in the offseason. Latu and JT Tuimoloau are really the only edge guys under contract after this. Samson Ebukam, Tyquan Lewis, Kwity Paye, they're all free agents. And the only guys you're confident you want to bring back who are under contract are Latu and JT Tuimoloau. I don't think they've seen enough from Tuimoloau to just kind of pencil him into the starting role next year without some competition. So certainly Latu will hold down one spot. I think Kwity Paye is unlikely to be able to be brought back for the price he's probably going to get. Now, he's not like a star pass rusher or anything, but he is a very startable edge rusher who gives you 7, 8 sacks a year. He's going to give you really good run defense. He's always been one of the best run defending defensive ends. That's going to get him at least 10 to 12 million per year on the market. And I just don't think that's going to be within the Colts price range, especially when you mention Jones, Pierce, maybe Nick Cross as well. So you kind of maybe early, but Cross pay off the list. I think they're going to wind up getting maybe 2, 3 bargain edge rushers to add to the group with Latu and with Tuimoloau. Guys maybe of that Samson Ebukam level. Ebukam was a guy that's about 10 million a year, so probably not quite as high. But if you can find 2 or 3 guys that you've signed between 6, 7, 8 million and kind of just piecemeal it together and make it like a really good rotation of edge rushers, I think that's probably what they'll do. They'll probably prioritize it early in the draft if they can. Obviously, they don't have the first round pick. But edge rusher is definitely, I think, going to be one of the most interesting spots that they address over the offseason. This last one for the top of the segment, it's from Ethan Callahan as well. Neville Gallimore has been solid in what he's been asked to do and seems like a great locker room fit. Could we see him brought back next year with a lot of the defensive line turning over? I think so. The Colts have been kind of on the hunt for reliable backup defensive tackle play, especially at 3 tech for a while now. Taven Bryan was what he was. They had, some lower level guys, some younger guys over the years try to get there. Adetomiwa Adebawore is getting better now, but Gallimore, for my money, is certainly the best backup 3 tech that they've had in the last several years. And you're seeing him play reasonably well with DeForest Buckner out on IR. So is he a guy that you want like starting all the time? No. However, Buckner's 31. He's coming off 2 seasons now that he's been on IR. He'll be there next year, but you're going to want to probably lighten his load a bit. And then you've got a guy like Gallimore who is getting a little older as well. Those guys can kind of play off each other and kind of give each other an ideal workload, I think. Gallimore may see a little more playing time if Buckner has to maybe ratchet down his snaps. And you've got Adebawore as well, who might see his snaps increase because he's been playing a lot better in his 3rd season. So Gallimore is definitely a guy I would look into bringing back as long as his price doesn't really get too high. All right, guys, that was a great first round of questions. Coming up next, we've got some more things that are kind of concerning you guys a little bit and more talk about Daniel Jones. The offseason chatter is not over either. So we're going to get to that in just a moment. All right, the World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why Gametime app is clutch. It's finally given the fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Gametime, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and then buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands, and it makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You just pull up the app, and the layout makes it really simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views. Pick a game, tap a section, and then have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. The seat view feature is a game changer too. You literally see what the pitch looks like from your exact seat before you buy, and prices include fees up front, which I love because there's no last second surprises at checkout when your prices suddenly skyrocketed. There's alerts for teams and matches, which makes it easy to grab tickets the moment that they drop instead of missing out. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets in every match, concert, or event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Gametime. All right, welcome back, everydayers. It is a Colts game day morning. They are taking on the Texans at Lucas Oil Stadium here this afternoon. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Now, we're very, very proud of that, and it is, of course, all thanks to you guys, the fans. We're going through your Q&A this morning, and up next, more Daniel Jones chatter. This one is from Latamuke. Should we expect Daniel Jones' fibula to linger throughout the back half of the season? If so, what are the implications for this offense? So I did do a kind of a whole episode on this yesterday morning. For those of you who hadn't seen it yet, the Colts are optimistic this will kind of improve actually as the season goes along. It's not something they feel they're like throwing him to the wolves and risking further injury by going out there and playing, and it should get better. Now, the implications for the offense is, you're dealing with a slight dip in mobility for Jones. You're probably not going to run stuff like the QB sneaks that had been so effective early in the year. You may not see as many things that ask him to like get out and be quick, like bootlegs and all that. So things that are really reliant on driving his legs or beating defenders to certain points, you're probably not going to see. Now, with Jones, as we saw against the Chiefs last week, if he sees an open lane still to run and get a first down, he's going to take it. He did that twice. So I don't think his mobility is totally out the door. But as far as like the Colts being intentional with doing that, I don't think you're going to see too much of that. Next question is from Zachary Vachon, who fills in for Ashton Dulin. The loss is bigger than many think, in my opinion, which I agree. Dulin, for my money, again, I think he was certainly having an all-pro year at special teams. I think he was perhaps going to be getting the special teams nod. Look at everything the guy had been doing. Like, as far as coverage goes and being a gunner and all the coverage teams, he's been playing lights out. He's been making tackles. He's been affecting the lanes in which returners run. But also as a return man, he's been lights out. Offensively, I know it has nothing to do with special teams, but when voters see guys contributing in different ways, it just affects how they think and how they vote. Dulin making big plays on offense. He had that one play on defense where he went and blitzed Jacoby Brissett. So I really think Dulin was on his way to an all-pro year. So when you talk about who replaces him, literally when you look at the roster spot the Colts filled for him, they brought George Odom back up from the practice squad to the active roster. So I think Odom has 2 all-pros to his name, 1 first team, 1 second team, to replace the all-pro and Ashton Dulin. So just as far as the roster spot goes, George Odom will do a lot. I think as far as gunner goes, you're probably looking at Chris Lamons. So all in all, look at guys like Chris Lamons, Mekhi Blackman, George Odom. And then in the return game, Amir Abdullah is probably going to take more of the load. Anthony Gould obviously probably leans into more of the kickoff return game even further. And then Tyler Goodson maybe as well in the return game. So offensively, the Colts like to do a lot of gadget stuff with Dulin, which I don't think they'll continue to do. Maybe if they get a wild hair about Gould, they can do that. But otherwise, when they need another player to just literally play receiver, Laquan Treadwell will be the guy there that steps up. This next one is from Jay Aduna. The more film that's out there, the more teams can find weaknesses in the Colts offense. Has Shane Steichen made adjustments since the Steelers game to compensate for that? Daniel Jones was really good against pressure early on. Why is he struggling now? And is there a way to address that in practice? So has Shane made adjustments since the Steelers game? I think he probably leaned into more 12 and 13 personnel, tighter groupings, bringing in more tight ends to help with blocking and pass protection. I have seen that a little bit more. I noticed with the Chiefs when they were successful offensively, a lot of the time they were doing it in those bigger packages. When they spread things out, it wasn't really going well. Obviously, Daniel Jones' injury is probably going to affect things a little bit with how they move him around, like we talked about earlier. Why is he struggling? So I think the Steelers game was probably very influential. The fumbles, all the hits, all that stuff. Like, I don't want to say he's seeing ghosts, but I think he's way more cognizant of pressure and the issues that can come from that rather than just playing freely and letting it rip and standing in tall and taking hits like he was early in the season. And then obviously right now he just can't escape as well as he did earlier in the season because of that leg injury. So you said, is there anything they can do in practice? Unfortunately, I don't think so because they can't hit him in practice, and he knows that. So he's probably going to look like a stud in practice because he can stand in tall and not get hit about it. So, I mean, they can simulate as much pressure as possible, maybe, but otherwise, I don't think there's anything they can do to compensate for that in practice. This next one is from Price. A lot of things seem to get cleaned up from the 2 weeks prior from the bye. No sacks, no turnovers on offense against the Chiefs. Special teams looked great. The defense looked improved. If the offense can get back in rhythm, do you think we can actually see a better version of this team than earlier? I do think so. I think the Colts have to, just not be stubborn. I don't want to say the Colts. It's really a Shane Steichen thing. Shane Steichen and Daniel Jones, as long as you can acknowledge what your shortcomings are and your limitations are and work around it rather than trying to slap some fix on it or, just keep hammering away at something that clearly isn't working. If you evolve a little bit, I think that will work. You certainly want to pursue the run game a little more. I know that can be a little tired because, the Jonathan Taylor thing and not running him in the fourth quarter. But for me, I'm just the type of person where I'm like, you have to give your best players a chance to, carry you. Like even in non-advantageous situations, I know the Chiefs were really doing a lot to stop the run, especially the Colts wanted to try and run it outside and the Chiefs weren't allowing it. Chris Jones was really good. There were some assignments that allowed linebackers to run free. But, I mean, you really have just got to give your best players a chance to bail you out. Like, I'd rather go down swinging using Jonathan Taylor and failing than wondering what it would have looked like by not using him, So certainly, look to, get rid of the ball quickly and accurately, which they did acknowledge they needed to get rid of the ball quickly against the Chiefs. I think it was Jones' quickest time to throw all year. It just wasn't always accurate in the fourth quarter. That one's really tough because I thought Jones actually looked really, really good in the first 3 quarters. And if that would have carried into the fourth quarter, we're not talking about a loss whatsoever. So again, whenever Shane tends to bail on the run game, I don't think it works super well for long stretches because there's been times where Taylor doesn't run the ball a ton in a game, but it's really effective still. Like he had that game where it was like 12 carries, but 1,000,000 yards. Like it's just about the timing of it. Don't bail on it for long stretches. And then just, get rid of the ball accurately if you're Jones, you know what I mean? Stand tall. You're going to take some hits. Just, stand in there and deliver because that's what the team needs you to do. It sucks because of the injury, but it kind of is what it is. Last one for this segment is from the Insider program. Only question I have is how long do we think the offensive staff is going to take to see the limitations of this offense against elite defenses that have sufficiently prepared for them? Yeah, so that goes along with the last one a little bit. So I'll just kind of put it from this perspective. Teams know about the injury with Jones. Teams know since the Steelers game that if you blitz the hell out of Jones, you're probably going to succeed in some facet. So the Colts did improve a little bit against the Chiefs with no sacks, no turnovers, but clearly teams are going to load up the box, try and stop Jonathan Taylor. They're going to bring pressure at Jones, and they're going to make him beat them with his arm. So what are the Colts going to do to counter that? Play action, run the ball, keep it fresh, keep it a threat, get rid of the ball quickly and accurately. They didn't push it downfield very much last week against the Chiefs. They had one throw of 20-plus yards, and that was successful, the one to Pierce on the deep right side. And then I think you only had like 5 throws that were beyond 10 yards. So you certainly can't just play half court like that. You have to have the threat of the run. You have to have the threat of the downfield throw. It doesn't mean you have to paint the yard with the ball, but it has to be a threat that you're going to push the boundaries a little bit. Otherwise, everyone knows that everything they're going to defend is right in front of them, and they can They can get really physical that way. They can be really instinctive that way and confident. So you certainly don't want to give defenders more ammo to play as confidently as possible, because that's just almost never going to work into your favor, unless, of course, you have something in your back pocket to counter that aggressiveness later, like a nice big play action shot or like a trick play or something. But you obviously you don't want to be stubborn. You want to know what your shortcomings are and work over those things. Once you can admit some of that, I think that is the next way to kind of evolve your offense a little bit. All right, guys, coming up next, we're going to wrap this up. And you guessed it, there is more Daniel Jones questions. We got some good ones coming up on a little bit of a game day morning question and answer session. All right, this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. Bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It is all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. PrizePicks has added an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. You could choose from a huge range of unique stats, from fantasy score, field goals attempted, free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your strategy. The early payout feature is a great bonus. When your lineup starts strong, you may get the option to cash out early. And the new stacks feature lets you choose the same player up to 3 times in one lineup, like more on a quarterback's passing yards, touchdowns, and rushing yards. Deposits and withdrawals are quick and easy, which keeps everything flowing. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. All right, welcome back, everydayers. It is a Colts game day morning. We're doing some Q&A here. The Colts and the Texans face off at Lucas Oil at 1 p.m. If you're going to the game, please drive safe. Obviously, it has just been snowing and it's slick and all that good stuff. So give yourself time to get there and arrive safely for us, because we want to see you there. All right, let's get back to these questions here. This one is from Cody. Should we be concerned about Daniel Jones becoming the New York Giants Daniel Jones? So obviously that's kind of the elephant in the room right now. Is his play has regressed since the Steelers game. He had like 12 turnovers or 12 sacks, like 7 turnovers in those first 2 games. And then even though he had no sacks, no turnovers against the Chiefs, he still kind of melted down in the fourth quarter when the Colts needed him the most. So I am not overly concerned that we're just going to see bad Daniel Jones the rest of the way. I do think the leg, if it doesn't improve and get healthier like the Colts think, then that could be a problem. Daniel Jones, even when he's not running the ball a bunch, his mobility is a big part of what makes him successful. So I just some things that give me a little comfort in knowing like that guy's still in there. The Falcons game down the stretch when they needed him, he made some big gutty throws, made some big gutty plays just in general. I think even if it hurts, the guy's going to run the ball. We've seen him make some really tough plays down the stretch. But yeah, he made great elite throws in that game, I thought, in order to help the Colts win. I mentioned against the Chiefs, the first 3 quarters, even though he was hurt dealing with the fractured fibula, I thought he looked great in the first 3 quarters. Made some plays that even got called back, or, plays that didn't wind up being converted. On the first drive of the game that wound up being a punt, he had that throw up the seam to Michael Pittman Jr., but the Braden Smith illegal formation called that back. Had a couple plays in the third quarter that likely would have been touchdowns or resulted in touchdowns later in the drive. So that guy is still out there playing good football. He just has to sustain it. It doesn't look like it did early in the season. But when I go back and I watch him again after games, I'm not incredibly discouraged that all is lost. So, don't fret. I mean, keep watching. There's going to be some tough defensive matchups, but I don't necessarily think the Colts are cooked by any means. This next one is from Frank M. Cook. As good as a play caller as Shane Steichen is, should he delegate that job to Jim Bob Cooter? I believe being a head coach is a full-time job on game day. I know Shane took a lot of heat in the Chiefs game for the fourth quarter and how that was called. And there was a little lack of aggressiveness on some fourth down stuff. I get that. I understand the frustrations. I don't agree with everything he did in the Chiefs game either. But Shane's been largely excellent all season as a play caller. And we don't know how Jim Bob Cooter would be as a play caller, but I am not by any means willing to get beyond Shane Steichen to see what it looks like. Largely, Shane has been just lights out as a play caller. And I mean, execution from the players is a big part of it too. When the players execute, it looks great. But when they don't, you kind of have to call the play call into question. Now, if you're talking game management and whether you think he's too aggressive or at some points not aggressive enough, I get that. But I mean, if you ask football people around the league who some of the top play callers are, Shane is almost always going to be in that conversation. So no, I mean, I like Jim Bob Cooter, and maybe he goes on somewhere that, I mean, he's probably going to be in some head coaching conversations this offseason, as well as Lou Anarumo. So like the Shane's surrounded by some good coordinators, but I don't want to see what it looks like with him not calling the plays, This next one is from Alex Smith, 3459. Do you think the Colts sweep any of the other teams in the division besides the Titans, or do you guys see it like last year when the last couple of games is more impactful? So they got 4 AFC South games coming up. They obviously have the Texans later today on Sunday, and then at Jacksonville, and then I think the last couple of games of the season is, or 2 of the last 3 is home against Jacksonville, and then in Houston. So they got 4 tough AFC South matchups still. I don't think they sweep it. I feel like it's more going to be 3-1. The Jaguars are unpredictable. They can be really, really good any week. The Texans and that defense, incredible defense. So I cannot say the Colts are going to sweep both or either. They could go 2-2 in that stretch with the AFC South, which might be enough to still be, still pulling the division crown. But I feel most likely like it's 3-1. I don't know which of the 4 games they lose. Maybe week 18 on the road in Houston. Seems like a good recipe for a really, really, really tough matchup. But yeah, I don't know that they'll, if I say 3-1, they're probably going to sweep one of them, but I can't say which of the 4 is going to be the loss. You know what I mean? It's just hard for me to see that they're going to sweep every team in the division this year when there's some really tough matchups included in there. All right. And then our last one here is from the Insider Program. I have a feeling of impending doom. What do you see on this team that can restore my hope? So I do think a lot of their issues are fixable. Jones, I do think, like I mentioned, played really well in the first 3 quarters last week. The Colts think his injury is going to improve. You have Jonathan Taylor still on your team, who, despite the not so productive game last week and then the bye week, is still leading the NFL in rushing. You've got a nice cast of pass catchers. The offensive line, we've seen it play better. So if they get back to how they were in the early portion of the season, I think that's really good. And then defensively, there's nothing not to like here. You got the 2 cornerbacks now, Sauce Gardner and Mooney Ward. You should hopefully get DeForest Buckner back before the season's up. Things are looking good there. He's traveling with the team. They say he's moving around well. So Buckner should be coming back at some point. And if he gets back with a few games left, and, Jalen Carlisle is coming back as well, you're getting a healthy team with some really good players in it, like a great secondary. Buckner comes back to help the pass rush. Suddenly you've got Laiatu Latu, who's playing well. DeForest Buckner comes in with the pass rush. And then you have to deal with throwing at Sauce Gardner and Mooney Ward with Cam Bynum behind them. And then Nick Cross coming in and blowing guys up inside the sticks. So super encouraged about the defense. Special teams coverage, those teams, well, return game too, has been playing really, really well. I'm not the most confident in the world with Michael Badgley, but I mean, largely he's been good. He's just had a couple hiccups. Not the strongest leg in the world, but overall special teams, I feel pretty good. And that's always an X factor. Like a lot of the times the teams with the better special teams makes those hidden plays, which wind up being the matter of wins in the league. Like look at the Atlanta game with all the good returns they had in that one. So I'm overall still very encouraged by this team. We've seen them play better than they have in the last month, so we know it's in there. If this new look defense can marry up with what the offense looked like early in the year, then that's not even a question. Like that gets back to being the best team in the NFL, I think. So, all right, guys, thanks for hanging with me on this game day morning. Again, Colts and Titans later. Be careful driving to the game. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. The NFL season is obviously in full swing. We're getting in the home stretch of the regular season. So for your next listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler the Madman Rowland gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you guys want to become a Locked On Colts insider and chat with us directly, get the inside scoop from the locker room, the facility, whatever, and just let us know what you're thinking, what you want to know. Then follow the link in our show notes and sign up for us. If you don't already, follow at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter. We're also on TikTok and Instagram as well. Also, please subscribe on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. We would love those ratings and reviews as well. And with that, you guys have a great day, and we'll see you after the game for the Locked On Colts Squad Show.